Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by Onyx Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is Onyx Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, Onyx Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust Onyx Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about Onyx, go to onyxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. All right, guys, if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle this coming year, look no further than a Kelbley's rifle. I've been rocking their Coda rifle for the last couple seasons, and I've had great success with it. It's an amazing shooter, and every time I put one of their rifles in somebody's hands, they're like, oh, I got to get one of these. Kelbley's holds over 92 world and national records that are either broken or set on one of their actions or rifles. So they really set a higher level of accuracy. If you want to know more about Kelbley's rifles, go to kelbley.com. That's KELBLY.com. Tell them Johnny Mack sent you with Soul Seekers, and go enjoy shooting that much more in this coming hunting season. Be blessed, everybody. Go check out Kelbley Rifles. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today's episode is going to be one that is going to be filled with a lot of information, a lot of perspective, and a lot of passion, as today's guest is Tobin Foulke of Training Northwest. He runs a self-defense pistol to rifle training academy. He is a jiu-jitsu connoisseur and also runs his own podcast, Enlightened Neaderthals, where he talks about everything you could imagine when a bunch of guys get together and have microphones in front of them. So without further ado, Tobin, brother, how you doing, man?
Real good, man. Thank you for having me on. And I was just going to say there about, I was laughing as you're talking about our podcast. It's like the smartest and the dumbest podcast all at once.
Hey, cover all the spectrums.
Yeah.
I love it. So, brother, you and I was starting to get into jiu-jitsu before I left the state of Washington. I had my kids training at the gym that you train at. Do you have kids that train there as well?
No, my older son goes somewhat under protest. He understands the benefits of it and that it's good for him, but I don't think he likes it. So he's very willing to take any excuse to not like. I gave him an out tonight because we're here. So I should be at practice right now. So I let him stay home tonight just because I'm not going either. So I have to. I can't force him to go on the night I don't go.
I love it.
So he does the class, and then oddly he likes middle school wrestling. He wants to be on the wrestling team. He did it last year, but for whatever reason, he's just not as into the jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. That I see it both ways. A lot of people like wrestling, not a fan of jiu-jitsu, and then jiu-jitsu guys like, I just want a little more. Wrestling feels so limited.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird too because there's a lot of really good wrestlers at the gym, and I keep telling him, like, if you want to be a good wrestler in school, come to the jiu-jitsu gym and talk to these guys. Ask them to teach you wrestling. They'd be happy to.
Yeah.
But whatever. That's dad talking to his son, which means absolutely no chance of we taking that advice.
I love it. Well, I was poking around on your website, trainingnorthwestllc.com, and you have it beginner to advanced rifle and pistol classes held year-round at a private range in beautiful Granite Falls, Washington. What's your history in firearms? Are you former military, or where does this idea of mentoring and educating and teaching other people their right to self-defense?
Okay, yeah. So I am prior military. I spent 4 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and then after that, worked for a contract called Global Response Staff (GRS) for another 6 years. So I carried a gun professionally for 10 years, and I did my last deployment overseas in 2009 or early 2010, and came home and honestly I didn't touch a gun for like 10 years. We were having babies and I was racing mountain bikes and it just wasn't on my mind. And then in 2020 when I got locked out of work, it was purely out of boredom. I was like, I haven't fired a rifle in 10 years. I'm going to buy an AR and go to the range. And so I did. And then as the or I should say, when I signed up for a membership at the range, you have to go through like some safety training, which just standard whatever, and then the final part of that is go out on the range, live fire 10 rounds to show that you can handle your equipment without being unsafe. And in my group of like I don't know 15 or 18 people who were new to the range going through this course, only myself and one other guy in the safety class had ever shot a gun before.
Hmm.
So the instructor is standing there kind of going like, "Oh crap, I don't he hadn't encountered this before." And I thought, "Holy shit, there's all these statistics that in 2020 and 2021 we had these record gun sales of first, it's like millions of first time gun owners in America, and they don't even people who do have or have owned guns for a long time, a lot of times don't really handle them very proficiently and safely. And so just kind of eyeing those deficiencies, I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to start a business that I give a shit about because I am a very strong 2A proponent, but I also acknowledge that gun owners make gun owners look really stupid sometimes.
Mm.
So this is my way of trying to like inject something into the firearms community that's positive and isn't like, like Molon lobby, fucking Molly patches and shit, running around acting like a fool in the name, with all this I am a pro gun owner type person on me. So I'm trying to be a little more common sense and a little more focused on this is a tool, it's a dangerous tool, and if we're going to maintain this right, we all need to be responsible because freedom really requires a shitload of responsibility, right? So
Yeah.
in order to not have Big Brother up our ass, we need to be policing our own self.
Mm. Yeah, it's so true. It's really interesting. I just got done today. I released an episode titled "It All Starts with a Daisy," and I had the marketing guy for Daisy BB guns on. And
Yes.
we were talking about that, and it's like, dude, I didn't realize how much trigger time and gun safety I learned through having a BB gun as a kid.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you know and you can get away with a lot of dumb and stupid mistakes, ignorant mistakes as a kid because
Yep.
it's a BB gun.
Yeah, and your dad yells at you, and you learn your lesson with a BB gun.
Right, right. Well, I actually, my father wasn't, I mean, I was more like left to my own accord
Oh, yeah,
when it came to
just
the
go
BB
figure
gun.
it out.
Just like, yeah,
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
this is a safety, this is how you put BBs in it, and go for it. um,
yeah.
But I think that is a strong attributing factor to my respect for firearms, my
Mm,
understanding of the damage that they can do. You
yeah,
know, when you're taking a tiny little BB and sending it down range and still, putting holes in things or, blowing up little GI Joes or Green Army men, you're like, oh man, then a real firearm's got to have some serious power behind it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll have to. I started both of my kids on a Red Ryder when they were 7 years old, and I would just make them like recite the Big Four safety rules, and then they had to kind of show me where the safety was and sort of demonstrate that they could handle it safely.
Yeah.
And then for a while, I made them. I would have to stand there, or my their mom would have to be there with them when they were shooting. But it really taught me a good lesson, which is that when I give my kids responsibility, they rise to it. And this was the first time I really saw it was when I bought them each a BB gun, because it was important to them to be, like I'm going to be a big boy and I'm going to take the BB gun out into the orchard by myself. But I have to prove to dad first that I'm capable of it.
Hmm.
Uh, so now, like my older son is 12 and he came to my 3 day. I run a 3 day course every summer. I call it the rifleman camp. We can get into that here in a little bit, but I let him come this year and I was kind of uncertain about it, and I thought about making him use a 22 rifle. And in the end, he wanted to shoot an actual AR. And I thought, okay, well, we'll just see how this goes the first day. And man, like it was very clear that he knows exactly what he's doing. He's very confident and competent in handling the piece of equipment.
Yep.
He runs that gun better than most grown men who come out to the range. And it's because we started slow and we focused on safety safety basics and marksmanship basics, and went from a BB gun to a air rifle to a 22. And now at 12 years old, he, as far as I'm concerned, he can take any gun of mine to the range, and he just needs to tell me,
Yeah.
hey, Dad, I'm doing this. Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's talk about that real quick, if you don't mind, because a
Yeah.
lot of people that listen to this podcast are newer hunters or getting into it. Maybe they are first time gun owners or whatever.
Yeah.
What are the steps and protocols or the verbal reminders that you say to your classes to help train them up on gun safety?
Every class starts with a safety brief, and that's just a carryover from the military. Anytime you're running a range professionally, if there should be someone who is overall in charge, like the head instructor or the range master, what have you, of safety on the range. And if they're not giving you some sort of safety brief to start the day, then that should be an indicator that something's off. And then, so part of that safety brief is we talk about expectations and how they handle their weapons and a little bit of nomenclature. And so a lot of times it's the safety gets pretty well hammered out right there in that brief, because you're laying down a few real simple ground rules, and most people are completely competent at following those. And so honestly, I've never had any major issues out there, because we run a pretty tight ship. It's not, I don't run it like a drill sergeant where I'm yelling and uptight and whatnot, but at the same time, I am in control of the firing line.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you see recently, actually just today, or maybe it's yesterday, it came out some Polish dude ended up shooting another guy on a firing line with a shotgun.
No,
Did you see that?
no, but I don't. I kind of try to make a point of not being on social media, so I end up missing a lot of these viral reels everybody's talking about.
No worries. Okay, so just real quick, when you hit those safety things, what are some of the things that you need to make sure that people know? Like if you're around somebody, because I'm really big on mentorship of new hunters. Well, one of the things is I need to make sure that somebody's proficient with a firearm or knows how to be safe around it before I take them out in the woods. I don't want to get Chris Kyled or
Yeah.
any of that type of situation going down.
Yeah, you can tell a lot the moment you see them handle their gun. Just by the way they hold it. Are they able to open the action without waving the muzzle around? Do they have their fit, like, if you see someone hanging their finger through the trigger well, or a lot of times with new people, I'll find the gun on fire a lot when it should be on safe. And especially with ARs, one of the first things I'll do in a basic level class, just to sort of establish where people are in their progression of learning, is I'll just ask them to lock their bolt to the rear. And some people can do that very quickly and easily, and other people it's a 3-minute ordeal.
Mhm.
And they get into like these weird yoga positions where you're like, dude, what is going on? Like, why are you bending over and leaning to the left as you're trying to pull your bolt back? I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And they don't either. So it's you can tell a lot about who knows what they're doing very quickly just in the way they handle their gun.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. So, what did you learn real quickly beyond the fact that there's a lot of first time gun owners in 2020 and you were at a range course and all of a sudden there's people like, wow, there's a lot of people that don't know how to handle guns. You were
Yeah.
like, I'm going to fill the gap for these
Yes.
people.
Yep. Yep. And so that's, like I said, this is my way to try to increase the proficiency and skill and safety of the firearms community. Just like I said, as a way to preserve that right.
Yeah. Well, it's important, right? Like a lot of people just take things for granted. They take for granted that there's food at the grocery store or that there's
Yeah.
food in the refrigerator or the pantry or that
Yeah.
the electricity is going to automatically turn on when they flip that light switch and
Yeah.
when crap hits the fan or the power goes out or grid failure or doomsday scenarios go down, can you handle yourself and can you also handle your household?
Yes, self defense and community defense is a real thing, and we have lived in like a bubble of good times here in America in your and my lifetime. And having traveled, all through my 20s, all around the world into some pretty shitty places, man, you start to understand that what we our lifestyle is the anomaly. We're the ones living this golden existence right now, and we can see it right now how fragile it is. Everything since like 2016, it's sort of like this slow decline of America. Now with record inflation and violent crime going unprosecuted, it's like, man, this could all collapse really fast, and it would be really smart if everybody understood how to protect what is theirs. Because if you have a pantry full of food and someone else doesn't, I always say you're about 12 missed meals away. Every human being is about 12 missed meals away from being capable of murder.
Yeah, right. And that is something that's not taught or talked about, and and I believe it should be. Like, let's just call it what it is. Like, the animal instincts will come out at this point. Here,
Yes, and think about like because we have Thanksgiving coming up on Black Friday. You remember hearing these stories about people who get trampled to death trying to get into a Walmart because there's a sale on electronics. And it's like, okay, if they'll do that for a sale on a cheap TV, imagine if they were hungry.
yeah, right. Well, so I worked at a grocery store for a very long time, and a lot of people don't realize that grocery stores only carry 3 days worth of food.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, dude, there's so much food at the grocery store. There's
Mhm.
not.
There's not. Yes. Yeah. It's yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I'm drawing. I'm just going. I went totally blank there. Um, Yeah, self defense is incredibly important, especially in difficult times. And then I also think maybe the biggest benefit people get when they come out to these classes is for a lot of them they're getting outside their comfort zone,
Mhm.
and so especially like the we just ran a women's class 2 days ago, beginner pistol, and so for them, they're coming out with a lot of nerves. This is something they're truly afraid of. They actually don't want to do it. This is something they just feel like they need to do.
Mhm.
Uh, and so when you get them that sort of familiarity with the equipment and they get over that hump of this isn't so scary, it's like a big boost in like their self-confidence and their belief in themselves. So, and I think that when it comes to, standing up for yourself, self-defense, defending your community, before you can worry about needing a gun or whatever weapon you have, you need to worry about having the actual fortitude to stand up and fight. And so that jump in self confidence is what I really think people take away from these classes.
Interesting. They always say, I've heard in trainings be told multiple times that you fall back upon your training. You don't fall forward onto like these
Yeah,
imaginary ideals
yeah,
or Hollywood
e-
stories you tell yourselves in your head.
exactly. When it all goes down, I'll be okay. I've thought it all out. No, you will not. You will go back to what you've rehearsed. We know this has been proven time and time again, right? It's the reason football players or whatever sport go to practice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. Well, so a part of what we're going on in this idea of self-reliance and taking care of yourself is your journey on top of getting back into shooting a firearm after a 10-year break is you also then were like, I need to start hunting. and,
Yes.
and is
Yeah.
that something as that you hunted as a child or were raised
Not
up in, or is this something that you're like, I'm putting my foot down and I'm learning this skill?
both. So I grew up in a little town in eastern Washington where everybody hunted except for my dad. So I was obsessed with it because everybody got the Cabela's catalog back in the day when everything came in the mail, and I'd be flipping through the pictures and be like, "Man, I can't wait till I'm old enough to get a green card and go hunting." Remember, you had to be 12 years old to get your little state safety card.
Yep.
So as soon as I was 12, I got my card, and I think my dad took me deer hunting all of like 2 or 3 times, and pretty quick I started middle school football, and then you're so tired on the weekends from getting beat up after at practice all week long, and so I just sort of fell off of it through middle school and high school. And then I joined the army. And the last thing you want to do on the weekends is go back out in the woods with a right. You know what I mean? It's like we just did that for 5 days. We're good.
Yeah.
And then I was in my 30s and we're having kids and racing mountain bikes again, and it just wasn't even in my like awareness. And then yeah, it was after the lockdowns, I guess. I think the lockdowns really woke people up to a lot of things, like it, not just vaccines and medical misinformation. It was just sort of like this authoritarian push of Western governments to have control of all aspects of life, and everybody's starting to pay attention now to all the like what's in your food. Like look at like what RFK is sort of
Yeah.
spearheading here. And so wanting to go hunting was about A, sort of learning how to do it for myself, and B, having cleaner food. And then just the experience of getting out and I don't know, have like a little mini adventure, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why I like to do like backpack hunting, is because I don't want to just drive around on the road from breakfast till dinner. I want to go make it a little like self-inflicted adventure. Um, but anyway, when so I guess I kind of started getting back into it a little bit, and I kind of dipped my toe in, went with some friends a couple times, and it really got me last year because we packed into this really pristine little lake way out in the Cascades and set up camp for a week and just lived simple out there. And my older son came for the first time. He was 11, and it was just the coolest experience. And I was like, okay, we're all in on this.
Yeah.
Um, and so and and I've I have gone deer hunting all of 4 years now, or I guess 3 years since I'm an adult, and the couple times that my dad took me. And, for a while there, I was kinda getting frustrated, like, "Oh, shit, like, how am I gonna learn how to do this?" And it's like, well, I I know how to. We've all been the new guy, we've all been the white belt, we've all been the new kid in class, or the freshman on the team, or the new private, or the white belt in the gym. It's like, "Alright, you just gotta be new.
Yeah.
Before you can be good at anything, you gotta be new first." So and then I thought, nobody was born knowing how to do this, so I'll just figure it out on my own. And I use a lot of sort of the same thought processes we used to use for patrolling in the mountains as a ranger in Afghanistan,
Mm.
because I mean, deer and humans are both biological creatures. They all need sort of the same things. And then now with, Google Earth and OnX and whatnot, it's like, shit, let's pull up some satellite imagery. We'll conduct a little intel operation here. We'll figure out. And so I have fun with it, and I run it in my head almost like a full mission planning cycle
Yeah.
and going into the hunt. And then it always makes me kind of like laugh, because as we're out there going through our week of hunting, it's like this is an infantry operation, guys. What we are doing out there is a fucking ranger operation. I'm sure I'll figure it out at some point. Just got to get through the being new part, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you went on this journey, and I gotta commend you. Like, the first step of getting into something completely brand new, and you had a little experience from your youth, but this whole
Yeah,
idea
so
of
going out in the woods is not new. Like that's the one thing I add as a caveat, is that I am very experienced at trekking through mountains and living out of a backpack.
yeah. Yeah, and I agree that the majority of human beings are missing this aspect of adventure in their
Yeah.
lives, right? This
Yes.
this mundane 9 to 5. I'm gonna actually read you something. This is out of my brand pillars for soul seekers. Our One of our pillars is primal adventure. It
Oh
says
yeah.
society is constantly influencing us to settle into a life of mundane boredom, where we waste our lives away waiting for a concept of retirement or for the next entertaining moment to capture our attention. At Soul Seekers, we believe that life is now, and it is meant to be experienced rather than observed. By living an adventurous life, perspectives are established, ushering us towards a life of wisdom, understanding, and fulfillment.
Yes, I love that. It's my girlfriend asked me a few weeks ago. She's like, if you, because I'm off work right now, she said, if you didn't have to ever worry about money ever again, what would you do with yourself? And I had to think about it for an hour or two, and I said I would go on mini adventures,
Yeah,
five, a week to 2 weeks at a time. But that's what I would do with myself.
yeah. That's
So,
awesome. I got asked that recently. I don't know, maybe it was one of my kids or somebody who's like, "What would you do if you didn't have to work?" And I said, "I'd garden. I would hunt. I would hunt, like I would go on my adventures, but ultimately I'd want to just be at home and establish like this thriving, beautiful ecosystem in my domain."
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Huh.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've just gone full circle. Like I want the red blood, but I love the flowers and the berries, and I got the chickens, and you know,
Yeah,
full
you
on
need to.
homestead.
Yes, yeah, Hunting is not, man. That's a hard life. If people who think they're gonna sustain themselves by hunting, that is a hard life. You need some agriculture.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What lessons have you learned since diving into hunting at an older age? And you, obviously, you have the skill set, and you're comfortable in the woods and all that, but everything teaches us something at some point.
Yeah, yeah. I would, man. First of all, when I first started going a couple of years ago, I took the old ranger mentality of like, hey, this is the equipment I have. Doesn't matter if it's heavy, I'll be stronger. Doesn't matter if it's not very warm, I'll be tougher. And what I have settled on here in the last year and a half is that if you want my money, warm, dry, and lightweight are three things I will pay handsomely for.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's lesson number one, man. Is get yourself, the right equipment, and that kind of leads into what I would call lesson number two. And I learned this through mountain biking as well. Is if you have a hobby that you're really passionate about and you want your children to enjoy it with you, so that you can all participate in it together, you have to get them good equipment too. So I would be out riding with my kids, and they're on their mountain bikes would weigh as much as mine, and I can't figure out why they're not having a better time. And then eventually I got them better bikes that weighed almost nothing, and suddenly they're flying down the trails and they're laughing and they're hollering because it had, it's a properly light frame with legitimate high quality tires, so they're in control and they're having fun. And it was like, oh yeah, you can't buy your kids budget shit and then not understand why they're not having the same experience you are. So it gets expensive, but I had to buy for my older son like a complete, I had to get him a nice backpack, which for anybody listening who's a veteran, shout out to Mystery Ranch. They gave it's like a 55% veterans discount.
Hmm.
Um, so I had to get him a nice backpack. I had all that warm and lightweight shit that I value so much. I had to get for him, and he fucking grows out of it every year and a half. So it's not like, I guess, you know what I mean. So it's like, oh, crap. Like I buy this stuff for myself, and I'm wearing it till it rots off my body. Buy it for your child. You just have to understand that hopefully there's a little brother coming up that can use it, and then you're gonna pass it on to a friend or something. But your kids aren't going to enjoy it unless, and for them to have the same experience you are, they got to have the same equipment you
Oh, totally. I mean, there's only so much we want to suck, right?
have.
Like the suck fest
Mhm.
is enjoyable to a certain point, but for children or first timers that want to find success, and as a school teacher, I know that if someone doesn't find success in a short little period of time, then they're going to give up or be disinterested in it and be like, okay, well, that was horrible. Why would I ever want to go back to it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, my memory of deer hunting is being wet and frozen. I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. I do not want to go with you again.
Sit here on the stump and just watch. I'll be back.
Exactly.
I'll be back in like a couple
I'll be back in
hours.
6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that story many times from multiple people, and it's really interesting. You know, as as you being a child of a scenario in that manner, you then realize, like, man, I want to parent different. I want to provide different experiences for my children. I want to make sure that they are hands-on learning. Is that ever like a main focus of your learning process? Is
Yeah,
I
and
have to learn this for my kids, or how do you go about that?
I think this is kind of answering that question, but I'm going to take it off track just a hair. Is what I have noticed with my boys is that at first I was feeling guilty this year because I took my older son out of school for 8 days to go deer hunting. It's like, man, he's missing a lot of classroom time. But then you look at what they learn just as far as woodsman skills, and people think of that as like screwing off and going out and having fun. But it's like, no, that these are also really valuable life skills for him to, like, before we even left, he knows the process. He knows we need to make sure we have the maps, and he needs to make sure he has a compass, and he knows how to read a map and a compass. And so we make sure we know where we're going, so we have the right map sheets, and then we pack all this stuff. And he knows that, okay, we need to make some fire starter. So he gets out the cotton balls and the Vaseline and starts, making up the little fire starter things to put in his pack, because he's also got his flint. My 12-year-old knows all these things.
Yeah,
So he's learning all these skills that will, maybe it won't make him rich, but it will enrich his life, because he'll be able to go out in the woods and enjoy himself out in the mountains like this.
yeah. entertainment is always free when you can do it yourself, right? And I mean that is such a
And he takes it seriously. So where he's bored with school because he's a 12-year-old boy, he takes this very seriously. And so it actually shows me that like I don't need to be too wrapped around the axle about his grades because when he's interested and occupied, he's completely engaged. And so it's just a matter of him figuring his own way out through life and figuring out what moves him.
mm, interesting. Have you had any success getting an animal down since taking up?
No,
No.
no, we've had people in our party, like our group of friends. We like our group of five shot 2 deer this last year, but Nathan or I have not.
Did you get a chance to put a knife on them and learn that process?
No, but I grew up on a farm, so to me, butchering animals is like it's not my favorite day when we got to do the whole yard full of chickens or whatever. But it's yeah, I'm pretty well aware of how to break an animal down.
Yeah.
So,
It is it's a special feeling though. I'll tell you that.
oh, I gotcha.
Eh,
Okay.
uh, so I've butchered chickens also, and
Yeah.
I've butchered chickens after I was a hunter and after I've killed animals, and
Yeah.
I was I'm like, oh dude, yeah, I can totally butcher chickens. Like I've killed animals before, but
Yeah.
butchering an animal is so much different than hunting an animal
Oh yes.
and then
Yeah.
walking up on it and putting your hands on it and then being like, whoa.
Yeah.
If God was there going, ah, like,
Yeah.
um,
Oh man.
it,
Yeah,
it,
I'm looking forward to Nathan finally getting something. He's gonna get pissed if we don't get a fucking animal.
it, it, it is, it is, that's what makes it so sweet though. I started my hunting journey, let's see here, in 2013, I got my hunter safety.
Mhm.
And in 2014, I killed my very first coyote.
Okay.
Um, but it wasn't until 2017, 4 years after taking my hunter safety, that I killed my first big game animal.
Okay. Yeah, I was feeling pretty stupid until I realized I saw somewhere online that like only like 12 or 14% of elk tags get filled in Washington state. And I went, oh, all right, maybe I'm not that dumb.
Yeah, yeah, no, 12% is is 10 to 12% is typical average harvest rate for elk. Um, and then deer sometimes can bump up to like 25%
Yeah.
depending on the population. But yeah, I mean, look at professional baseball. 1 out of 3 times somebody gets a hit and they're Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
put in the time, the work, it will naturally come. So
Yep.
what's on the horizon for you? What are the things that you're starting to look at and really want to give a go at? Is it out of state hunting? Is it applying the
Yeah.
training more?
It's all of it. I went to a guy named Tony Cowden, who's kind of a well-known firearms instructor. He came out this last summer and taught a course on our range. And while he was here, you like we you make friends with someone immediately. Sometimes you just know, like you hit it off. And he invited Greg and I out to Montana to his long range shooting course out there. And so, we can't do a lot of that here because of the rainforest. And that was the first time I'd ever done that extreme long range, like 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 yard shots. And I'm absolutely hooked on that right now. So I see a combination of that and hunting. I just ordered a really lightweight 7 PRC uh, kind of mountain rifle, and I'm a Vortex dealer, so they hooked us up with a couple scopes that we can put on these guns. And I guess up in the Cascades, where we go up in the high alpine, you can get up to probably 12 or 1,300 yards. I don't think I'd want to shoot at an animal that far because I can't guarantee a lung shot. I think right now where I'm at, realistically, like 400 yards is probably the edge of my range right now with the gun I have. But I'm looking forward to this new gun coming so we can stretch it out a little bit longer. And it's just something to keep you engaged with and always learning. And it's like being at the jiu-jitsu gym.
Mm,
You start as a white belt, and then at some point you're like, holy shit, I'm a purple belt, and I actually kind of know what I'm doing out here. So now I'm in the white belt phase of hunting and long range shooting. So I'm looking forward to sort of combining the two and putting them together here.
Yeah.
And with Training Northwest, I've also added. I'm starting to next month. We're teaching our first beginners rifle course specifically for hunters. Where in the past it's been a beginners carbine course specifically for the AR-15 platform. Now we're going to do it with scoped centerfire rifles, and there are a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of infantry type application that can be put towards hunting. Like, how many guys do you think actually have ever thought about I just spotted my animal. What's my shortest, fastest process from here? I've got to range it, get into a firing position, get a sight picture, and get the shot off. Like, can you do that quickly? Have you thought it out? How are you going to go about doing that? Or do you panic and get an adrenaline dump in the moment and then, fuck, there goes the animal because I'm over here dicking around with my backpack, right?
Right.
So working out like a sequence of action on the range and you simulate everything just like you would for self-defense, or you stand there with all your kit on, you go, okay, there's your animal, go. They have to set their rifle down, range it, take off their backpack, set up some sort of a supported position, get their sight picture, get their shot off. And, you just make a target the size of like a deer's vital organs, and you've got yourself a training iteration.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then add a little bit of jumping jacks or run in between and get that heart rate
Yeah.
elevated and be like, oh.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I have that. I have to constantly remind myself all the time, every hunt. Um, I call it order of operations.
Yeah.
Is what is my standard of where I am even placing items. So
Yeah.
I had a failure. I was going doe hunting here a couple weeks ago, and I spotted a doe. And whitetails are hard to hunt. That is a fascinating animal. Um, but wanted to shoot off with shooting sticks. But when I got
Mhm.
into my blind, I set my shooting sticks off to my left, out of range, where I had to actually move my
Yeah.
upper body to go reach for them. That's all it took, and that doe blew out of there, and
Yeah.
I never got a shot off. And then I was like, okay, well, I learned from that once again and reminded myself the next time that I got in, I was like, okay, my shooting sticks need to be within me putting my hand out to grab them so that I can,
Yeah.
and then I ended up shooting 2 does, which was phenomenal. I'm like, okay, see, all it is, but order of operations, right? Like, okay, what am I going to do? What is my yardage if you're archery hunting? Like, okay, that tree is at this distance. This tree is at this distance. I actually had a hunt. I think you can see it in season 1 or 2 of Soul Seekers, an elk hunt where I ended up shooting an elk at 70 yards, and I never actually got to range it with my rangefinder. It
Mhm.
was archery, but going on my walk through the woods at this time, I was mentally preparing for shots and guessing distances, and then ranging it and be like, okay, I'm accurate,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
oh, I'm a little short or a little long, and so I was already prepped for that exact moment, so that when I went full draw and then stepped out from behind this bush, when I saw my distance, I knew it, and
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and ended up taking an animal on that. So,
Yeah,
um,
and that's one of those like things where I say infantry stuff crosses over, because anytime I sit down to watch like a clearing or whatever, I'll immediately start making a mental what we call a range card, which is just like think like a an overhead view of the ground you're looking at, but you're getting distances to like distinguishable objects. Like, okay, that rock over there is 400 yards, and I'll range that. Oh, it's 700 yards to the riverbank over there, and this tree close to me is 150 yards, and you start building this like uh, this picture of the area around you in terms of ranges. And I'll add into that, it's like, okay, if that rock is 400 yards, then I know I'm dialing 13 minutes on my elevation dial. And this over here is 150 yards, I'm dialing 3/4 minute. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
and so you start building all this and just hoping that an animal will walk out somewhere close, and then you can kind of guesstimate from there.
Oh yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Onyx. They're one of our sponsors here at Soul Seekers. But my hunting partner Sam, he went and filled his buck tag here in Texas. It was about a week ago or so, and he forgot his rangefinder. So he made his
Oh,
way up all the way to a blind, sun setting, and he realized he didn't have his rangefinder. But what he did, he pulled out his Onyx, and Onyx has a compass mode where it shows you your distance on a line, and then
No
when you
shit.
rotate it, and it'll give you yardage, like,
Yeah,
100, 150, 125. And so he was able to identify the
yeah,
distance of where this buck was. He ended up shooting it at 325 yards, all because of the Onyx compass mode. And he
nice,
doped his gun and was able to drop this buck.
nice. That's awesome. Onyx is my new favorite toy.
Oh,
I,
it's
I hadn't paid the $30 or whatever until this last season, and I paid it, and I was like, "Why? This was so stupid. Why did I hold out on this?"
no joke. And this is one of the reasons, like, they're the longest company that I've worked with partner wise, because
Yeah,
they are a game changer. I say that as an advertisement of this podcast
but
before this
this is
episode airs.
yeah, this is huge from a standpoint of like go back to 2001, Army Rangers in Afghanistan with no access to overhead imagery. That shit was for like command level headquarters,
Hmm.
and now every single person can have overhead imagery in their pocket, updating like following them and updating them on their location in real time. It's awesome.
Oh yeah.
And you can you should even, I always say, you start the hunt or the operation at home. You do your planning and reconnaissance in your living room, and I know a lot of guys will do the same thing. They're just sitting there looking at potential areas they want to go check out, making their plan for the next week or the next season, or even at night at camp, just making your plan for the next day. Having that imagery to look at is so valuable.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll talk about how I used it today.
Yeah,
I was digital scouting. I'm heading up to Nebraska to hunt whitetails, and I've never been to Nebraska. It's on property I've never hunted before. But on top of that, now we're starting to get into post rut whitetail activity. So the main rut is starting to dwindle off. It's still kicking, but we're more into post rut. And so I'm like, okay, well, I want to hunt transition corridors a whole lot more than bedding areas. It's cold snaps coming, deer are going to be on their feet, wanting to eat a whole lot more to get their bodies going after expending so much energy during the rut. And so I'm on Onyx and I'm already looking at the property that I'm hunting. And I'm like, okay, where's my bedding areas? Well, here, okay, here's a good clump of trees. Here's a river bottom. There's heavy, thick brush line, and I'm making these mental notes from Onyx before I even get there. And then when I get there, then I'll be able to see where I'm going to be at and what stand I want to be choosing, and really you got a game plan. You want to have
yeah,
success, you
yeah,
got a game plan. Just like
exactly.
before an interview and a job, you got to know what you're going to be talking about. When you show up to your job, you got to know your stuff and know how to navigate and work around it. Everything comes down to game planning.
Yeah, totally. Um, and kind of going back to what I was saying about being a white belt and figuring it out is because we hunted the same area for the second time this year, and I kind of expanded my awareness of the area by stalking some different ridge lines. But then you use that overhead tool and you kind of start to get a feel for like the greater area. And then as you're finding different trails, and you have last year's kind of data in your mind, and it's like, oh, you start to really learn the area and learn where the animals move through and whatnot. And so we sort of established that this one particular like saddle is a major lane of transport where a bunch of game trails on either side of this tall ridge line all funnel in from either side, and then they use this one trail to traverse over the saddle if they want to cross from one valley to another. So just using it that way to expand your awareness of an entire area. Again, it's hunting applicable, and it's also there's so much like paramilitary application there for people who like to nerd out on that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, dude, it's the best. It's the best. What things do you feel like are your biggest takeaways that you've learned on your new journey of getting into hunting?
Oh boy, make time to hang out with your kids and with your close friends, because you're never going to think about the time you did that one construction project in that one place, but you'll talk about that 8 days that you spent running around the mountains for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and take the time off. Don't make it a long weekend. Take the whole fucking season off.
If you can, I know. I all the time I kick myself. I'm like, man, being a school teacher has its perks, but it's
Yeah,
really
not in
hard.
the
It's
fall.
not in the
Not in the
fall. It's
fall.
really hard to take time off when your school season's, school year's kicking off.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yeah,
And it's been really cool to have an activity that my son and I connect on. So we always connected on mountain bikes, and now this is like one more, and it's like, fuck, dude, it's fatherhood's a lot easier when you can just hang out with
mm,
that, you know.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Mutual respect, learning through, that. Man, I can only imagine. I did a lot of things in my life because my dad liked to do them.
yeah,
Right? It's
yeah.
like I want to hang out with my dad. I want to be with my dad. I'm gonna take up his hobbies, and at the same time, um,
What were those hobbies?
oh, sports.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Uh, Football, basketball, baseball.
yep,
I lived sports as life.
okay,
Never taught gun safety. No, we went backpacking. Those were some of the backpacking and fishing was something that I got into
okay.
in my youth. But no, hunting is just like the ultimate fulfillment of all the skill sets, all the mental, physical, emotional put into
Yeah,
one. And it's such a dichotomy of it's ultimately selfish and one of the best things you can do for a community.
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So
I-
let's talk a little bit about your Enlightened Neaderthals podcast, real quick.
Oh boy, yeah. Let's do it.
I mean, we're gonna wrap this up here in just a bit,
Don't
but
don't share it with your minor students, please.
what a lot of people nowadays, they're like, oh, I hear from people like, man, I feel like I missed the boat on podcasting because everybody has a podcast. At the same time, I'm a believer in it doesn't matter how many times a topic has been written or spoken about, no one's ever heard it from your perspective. And
Yeah,
that's something to keep in mind.
and authenticity too. I think the reason our show is, I mean, it's not big, it's small. It has a couple hundred downloads a show. Um, but the reason people keep coming back is we're authentic. It's not, there's nothing staged. We're not trying to push any narrative. It's literally the three of us sit down and start talking.
Mhm.
And we're we're genuinely best friends. We genuinely believe the things we say, and we don't try to. There's no rules on it. It's whatever. We might have a topic picked for that day, but we go on some pretty wild tangents as well.
Yeah. Dude,
Yeah,
podcasting is fascinating. My wife and I, we took a walk before we started recording tonight, and that's one of the
mhm.
things that way her and I engage in our relationship together is to go after the kids go to bed. We make sure we get some good uninterrupted walking and talking time.
Yeah, yeah,
And she was like, "Yeah, I was listening to a podcast." She goes, "I can't believe Joe Rogan just sits down and talks for like 3 to 4 hours. Like,
yeah.
like that's a lot."
Yes, it is, man. That's a long time, and I'm not even a big talker, so I don't think I could do a solo show. Thank God I have Mike and Jordan there to carry that weight, and it's much easier for me to talk when I'm talking to someone. There's zero chance I could just sit down with a microphone and talk. Um, he also gets super, because of who he is, he gets these ridiculously interesting people on his show, so that's got to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Uh, but then to the people who think they're missing the boat, man, it's also a big commitment to be consistent with it. If you want to have any kind of success, you need to have a consistent release. Like our show comes out every Friday, but if you're putting out a show every 17 days, just kind of whenever you manage to get it done, then you're never going to develop any kind of a audience. So it's a commitment to sitting down for 2 hours one time a week, which can be difficult, especially like scheduling with two other people, making it work for all three of us. And then I've got probably another hour of uploading it onto the computer, putting all the cuts together, change it to this format, upload it to the website, right? Do all this shit, and it's like, okay, this is actually, at first it's exciting, and then it becomes like a labor of love.
Yeah, 100%. There are many times where I've been like, is it worth it? Am I making a difference? Am I getting out of it what I wanted to get out of it? Am I doing it for myself still? Do I want to make sure I'm supporting and inspiring and helping other people, or
Yeah.
and there was a lot of times where I was like, maybe I'm just done. And
Yeah.
then I'm like, no, man, it is so much fun to have
Yeah.
uninterrupted conversations with
Yes.
people and hear their stories, and
Yes.
uh,
Yes. And
ultimate
yeah, for
ultimate
me,
networking tool.
yeah. And it's like, all right, at the end of the day, once a week, I'm going to sit down with my two best friends and talk for 2 hours.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
Yep.
it's like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. We just happen to be recording it. Other than that, it's like, dude,
Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
hangout time.
And that's literally how it started. Is those two guys came over to my house for dinner one night when we were just kind of getting to know each other through the gym, and it was actually a dinner to discuss future hunting plans. Um, and we were sitting there, and the conversation, it was so fluid and natural, and we're all three laughing, and it was like, we should be recording this, and that's how it started.
I love it. Where can people listen to your podcast at?
It's on all the platforms: iTunes, Spotify. There's probably half dozen smaller ones like Out, Outcast, and I don't know, iHeartRadio, all these different hosting platforms. So it's uploaded to one platform that then shotguns it out across the internet.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, brother, I want to highlight your Training Northwest. So, if anyone is wanting to get interested in being taught pistol, carbine, or even rifle classes for hunting, how can they connect with you on that?
So the website is trainingnorthwestllc.com, and my email address is on there. It's trainingnorthwest@protonmail.com. Um, and I've posted a few things early this year. I typically don't post the year's training until after January 1st, just because I don't want people registering and money going into the previous year's tax bucket. So it's the only way I can figure to keep everything sort of separate is not post the 2025 schedule until January 1st. So really, you should look after the new year unless one of the hunting classes that is up right now interests you. And I actually, for folks who are local here in Snohomish County, Washington, we schedule private classes all throughout the winter. That's just on a contact me by email basis. And I think that's about it. Listen to the Enlightened Neaderthals podcast, and there's a Training Northwest YouTube page if that's interesting to anybody.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome, brother. What do you want to get out of hunting?
It's those mini adventures, man, and it's the time with the buddies and the time with the kids, and it's the memories, and it's like you remember the time you got caught in a nasty snowstorm up on the ridge line, and I've got like this great little 5-second video of me laughing, and my son just looks miserable as fuck, and we're huddling under a tree trying to wait out this rainstorm that's coming in sideways, and it's like, oh, he'll remember that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's the adventures and the memories.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, brother, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thanks for
Yeah, thanks for having me.
sharing your stories, your insight. Um, I hope listeners, if you want to learn, get better with your firearms, go hit up Tobin,
Yeah.
trainingnorthwestllc.com, and tell him Soul Seeker sent you. But go check that out. If not, go be proficient with your firearm. Shoot,
Yes.
practice, dry fire, get a Daisy BB gun, and get trigger time.
That's right.
Shoot, I literally was just hung a pop can off a tree in my backyard and was shooting it the other day while I was grilling, and I was like, dude, I don't know why I didn't do this a long time ago. This is
Oh,
awesome.
it's so much fun. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much fun.
Yeah.
So, brother Tobin, thank you so much, and good luck on. Do you have any hunts left this year?
We might. There's a late blacktail hunt, but it'll just be a day thing if we go. So nothing exciting.
All right. Well, what next year? You planning on doing anything out of state?
Yeah, we are. Well, if I can get an Idaho tag. So when we were in Montana with Tony doing the long range class, there was a plan cooked up to get some Idaho elk tags, but I hear there's a long queue on December 10th.
Oh,
So,
I was in line last year, and I was number 13,000.
yeah. Okay.
So the
Yep.
elk tags, no elk tags were available by the time I got there. I had a couple mule deer tag options, but I was specifically going for elk, so I ended up not getting anything.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. So we turkey hunting in the spring, and that's all that's on the radar right now.
All right, there you go. I love it. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode. Thank you, Tobin, for being a part of it, sharing your wisdom and knowledge and insight. Remember that if you want hunting to last for generations to come, then you need to be an advocate for it. You need to speak up. Before the Second Amendment comes the First Amendment, and that is where our defense of it all begins. We are ambassadors for the things we love, whether we know it or not, or whether we want to admit it or not. Stand up, be proud, love it, advocate for it, and speak about it like it's the best thing ever, because it is. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Be blessed, freedom on, and as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship is conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure. If you want to get more connected with the podcast, check out the Soul Seekers Nation Facebook group, as I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. So stay tuned and stay soulful.